All right, we are 6 days away from the first primary in the state of Iowa. Kind of a primary. It's a caucus. People show up, they have a meeting, they sit at tables, and Iowa voters got the last chance to look at the Democratic candidates last night. There was a sort of debate. It wasn't really a debate, it was a town hall forum. Each of the three Democratic candidates, Bernie Sanders, Martin O'Malley, and Hillary Clinton, in that order, answering questions from Chris Cuomo of CNN and from the audience. Everybody did fantastic, Lewis. I mean, you have soft opposition. You're basically allowed to just talk. You're going to look pretty good as long as you have a plan. But there are some pretty interesting things here. Segment producer Noah Ferguson pulled some of the clips for us. Let's start first with Bernie Sanders. This was interesting. Bernie Sanders asked, in spite of Hillary Clinton potentially being the first female president, how would you be as good or better for women than would Hillary Clinton?
Alexis, second aspect to your question, though, right? You said then the first female president. How do you think that you would be as helpful to women as a woman president would? Yeah. What about that aspect? That's what Hillary Clinton represents on one level to voters, that she would be the first female president. And there is something special in that, especially when it comes to women's issues.
And of course, I understand that. But I think if you look at my record in terms of fighting for women's rights, I think there are very few members of Congress who have a stronger record. It's 100% lifetime, and I've been there for a while. In addition to that, there have, as you know, women are making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. That is nothing but old-fashioned sexism, and I am a strong advocate and will fight for pay equity for women. I believe that, and it's not only women, although it impacts women, it impacts women of color even greater. This level of pay inequity is extraordinary.
All right, so let's stop it there. So the good, Bernie Sanders making the point that, hey, identity politics alone don't make you good or bad on a particular issue. Certainly they may make you sensitive to a particular issue in a way that you could not otherwise be. But if you look at my voting record is fantastic. And then he went on to sort of draw on the general themes of his campaign: pay, income inequality, that is non-gender inequality, et cetera. The problem I have, Lewis, he said 79 cents for every dollar a man earns. That number is just not right. And we're extensively researching that. We're going to have a long form piece about the gender pay gap. There is a gender pay gap. It is not 77 or 79 cents per dollar. So that was disappointing that Bernie Sanders used that, although many politicians continue to use it. They may not even know that that's not the right number at this point.
It's not the right number, but there is this inequality.
Yes,
right?
There is.
There is a pay gap. In some sectors, it's bigger than others.
Absolutely.
I think there is a lot of misinformation on that topic.
Let's next go to Chris Cuomo asking Bernie Sanders about his shift, known to some as a flip-flop, on manufacturer liability and gun store liability when guns are used to commit crimes. This has just come up again and again. Here's Bernie finally taking it head on.
Criminals.
Senator, address your shift on the issue regarding manufacturers and their liability.
Just
to remind you guys, tell them where you were first and then what you just said recently.
I voted for the bill. And the reason I voted for the bill is you got a bill which has a number of elements in it. Among other things, it has a section which says we should not be selling ammunition which will pierce policemen's armor and protection. I think that's the right thing. It had a section in it which said that we want to have safety locks for children on guns. That makes sense to me. It also had a provision in it which says the following, and people may disagree with me, this is my view, is that if you are a small gun shop in Vermont and I legally sell you a weapon, okay, you go out, buy that gun legally, and then you go out and kill somebody. I think the gun shop owner should not be held liable for your criminal act.
All right, let's stop it there. I agree with Bernie Sanders on this. I am bashed day in and day out, Lewis, for being a gun-grabbing, crying liberal sissy on guns, or whatever it is people call me. I am in favor of all sorts of gun safety regulations, but if a small business sells a gun that they are legally allowed to sell, does the background check, does everything they need to do to legally sell that gun, the small business gun store should not be held liable if someone ultimately commits a crime with that gun. That's just common sense to me. I'm glad he cleared it up, and I hope people understand what it is that Bernie Sanders is saying.
I think some people that are way more liberal than you might say that that's not good enough. They like to point the finger everywhere. It is common sense. I agree. Unless the gun store is breaking the law,
Right.
it does not make sense that they should be held liable for anyone else's crimes of any sort.
And then Bernie Sanders' closing statement here.
You got 30 seconds. Tell the voters of Iowa what you want them to know.
Look, Hillary Clinton is a very good person. Martin O'Malley is a very decent guy. So I'm not, this is not a personal stuff. It just seems to me that the crises that we face as a country today, and we didn't even get into climate change to a significant degree, inequality, poverty in America, an obscene and unfair campaign finance system. These problems are so serious that we have got to go beyond establishment politics and establishment economics. In my view, we need a political revolution where millions of people stand up and say, you know what, that great government of ours belongs to all of us, not just the few. That's why I'm running for president. Thank you.
All right, so Bernie Sanders continuing to drive this main theme home. Inequality is not good. Corporations have taken over, and the average person is just not getting a fair shake. On comes Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of State, asked about being new to the issue of income inequality, an issue that has been Bernie Sanders' bread and butter. Hillary Clinton asked a question saying, you're sort of new to this issue. What about that? And here is Hillary Clinton's answer, and I think there's something very interesting in this.
Great. Secretary Clinton, earlier this month, Vice President Joe Biden said you are a newcomer to the issue of income inequality, while praising Senator Sanders for his authentic voice on the issue. How do we know that you will keep this issue a top priority?
Well, I have the greatest respect for the Vice President, but I think it's fair to say that I have a 40-year record of going after inequality. And not only economic inequality, racial inequality, sexist inequality, homophobic inequality, the kinds of things that go after people to put them down and push them back.
Let's stop the clip. So I agree. Hillary Clinton for a long time has been fighting for the rights of the little guy in many ways. But Hillary Clinton was in favor of defining a marriage as between one man and one woman as recently as a few years ago, right? So
Yes.
I think it's odd, Louis, that she includes as her lifelong battle fighting against homophobic inequality. She was the one saying we need to keep marriage between one man and one woman less than a decade ago.
All right. I guess you could get into the minutia of that. She might say, well, I was in favor of something else, maybe not marriage.
With all the same rights.
Unions, rights, whatever. But as far as I'm concerned, and it sounds like as far as you're concerned, it was a flip-flop.
Whether it was a flip-flop or not, the main issue I have is what record of a life, 40 years of fighting against homophobic inequality. I don't think the data back that up whatsoever. And then lastly, Hillary Clinton asked about the email scandal, and then it was a very interesting exchange she had with Chris Cuomo about it.
On that issue, the Des Moines Register, as we said earlier, gave you an endorsement. They did question your judgment, though, when it came to the email issue. They said, and you know this, but for the audience, in 2008, quote, when she makes a mistake, she should just say so. This weekend, they said, that's a lesson that you have not learned. Yes, you apologized, but only when you needed to, not when you first could have. Fair criticism?
Well, I think that look, I was delighted to get the Register's endorsement, and it was a very generous one. And yes, I think that's a fair criticism. You know, I had no intention of doing anything other than having a convenient way of communicating, and it turned out not to be so convenient. So again, we've answered every question, and we will continue to do so. But maybe being faster, trying to scramble around to find out what all of this means, I probably should have done that quicker.
You're willing to say it was an error in judgment? You should have apologized?
No, I'm not willing to say it was an error in judgment, because nothing that I did was wrong. It was not in any way prohibited. And
not apologizing sooner, I mean.
Well, apologizing sooner, as soon as you can. But part of the problem, and
All right, so we see where this is going. Asked about that, no, she will not admit it was an error in judgment. This is really a non-story for me, and I think that's it. And we will see if she is the nominee, if it continues to be an issue against the eventual Republican nominee. I believe that it will be. We have 6 days until Iowa, essentially tied Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. Louis, we will have data very soon, actual voting data.
I can't wait. And I think you were right. If she is the nominee, we might even see an indictment here based on the email stuff. It looks like there might be one looming, right?
I don't know. I don't know the answer. I know there are people who want there to be one.
There is an FBI investigation.
There is an investigation going on, and we will continue to follow that.